Before we get into the content, I wanted to say thanks for everyone who watches. I wanted to give away 5 awesome skins once I hit 100 YouTube subs, and I also want to give away 2 awesome skins once I hit 50 Twitch follows. So if you enjoy the content, subscribe or follow and you'll have a nice little chance to win a skin. All right, let's get into it. Hey everyone, today we're back with a update on the cleanliness versus godliness update notes. I'll be going over the item changes in this video. God changes will be a separate video, so I'll link that in the annotation and in the description below. But we're going to go over all the item changes that are happening on September the 21st and how those are going to affect Joust. There are actually a couple other small little adjustments that don't have to do with items, so I'm going to just go over those really quickly before we hop into it. The first is that Joust, you're going to have to be level 30 to play it in ranked, and you're going to have 14 own gods at mastery level 2, and you're going to have 30 normal PvP Joust games played. So if you're interested in the ranked Joust game mode, you're going to have to meet these criteria first, which shouldn't really be a problem. It's pretty easy to do all 3 of these things as long as you play the game fairly consistently. Another quick change is that the Bull Demon King was not playing a global audio queue before. It will now, as it's slain, so you'll know when that gets killed. So those are the only 2 little quick changes to Joust. So let's just get right into the item changes. The first item that's getting a change is Belt of Frenzy. Both the normal starter item and the upgrade are getting buffs, increasing the attack speed from 15% to 25% on both of them. I already thought Frenzy was a pretty good item in Joust. It allows you to take objectives very quickly or win team fights very quickly as well if you pop it at the right moment. So I think this is probably going to be a very popular second item in Joust, depending on what your team is looking like and how far ahead you are. I think beads and stuff is still pretty good for a lot of the carry type roles, but if you pop a Frenzy, those objectives, the towers, the phoenixes, even the Titan and the Bull Demon King are going to go down fairly quickly, so you don't have to risk as much when you go in for that fight. So this will be a very good item. I still think it's a good item now, but it'll be even better once that update rolls through. Heavenly Wings getting a buff as well, decreasing the cooldown from 140 to 120 seconds on both the normal starter and the upgrade. I think Heavenly Wings can be a good item in Joust too. Not as useful, I don't think, in some scenarios, but if you really are having a hard time chasing down a AMC, or if you're getting hit by a ton of slows, if the other team has a bunch of slows, it can be a good item that really counteracts some of the things that the other team is trying to do. And now that it's up 20 seconds earlier every time, you're going to be able to use it more. So again, in certain situations, this could be a good item for you. Horrific Emblem also getting a decreased cooldown from 130 seconds to 110 seconds. I find myself buying this item more than I find myself buying Heavenly Wings. I think it's more beneficial to slow the other team down in certain situations than it is to just be able to have you move faster. It slows down ADCs, any sort of basic attack-based god. Horrific Emblem is really, really good against. So I think this is also another one of those items that, depending on the comp you're playing against, can be a really powerful second item. And it's up 20 seconds more often as well, so that's going to be good. Magic Shell used to be almost a go-to item. They switched it a little bit to not have block stacks, but now they're buffing it because not that many people get it. I actually get Magic Shell quite a bit. I still think the turn potential on team fights is really valuable in Joust. If the other team isn't expecting a shell and you pop it at the right moment, it can really turn that fight in your favor if it wasn't before. But either way, it's still getting some improvements. All allies take 20% reduced damage from basic attacks for the entire duration. So that's really good, especially against certain comps if they have a soul and a hunter, or they have an Erlong and a soul, or a Freya and anyone else that really relies on basic attacks to do their damage. This shell is going to really help in some of those team fight situations. And the upgrade still has the same effect at 50%, which is unchanged. So this item, better against some of those basic attack comps. I still think it's good in situations where you need to save your teammates from a giant burst of damage, but it'll be better against those specific basic attack gods. Meditation Cloak, decreasing the cooldown from 160 seconds to 140 seconds. 160 seconds is pretty insanely long. 140 seconds is still pretty long if you compare it to some of the other items we've looked at. It's still 20 seconds or 30 seconds more for this item. And then the upgrade as well, decreasing the cooldown by 20 seconds and increasing the cooldown per tick that you get from that item from 5 seconds to 1 second. I think this item can be good in Joust too, this relic. It's just a little bit more passive than a lot of the other items. If you're poked out and you hit this, you can really heal up fairly quickly when you're out of combat, but I don't think it's as good in those moments where you need to survive. So if you're trying to run some sort of kind of sustained poke comp, Meditation Cloak can be really good. Otherwise, if you are going to be fighting in person or in close quarters more often, I think some other items still have an effect that's better than the Med Cloak, even though they are getting a little bit of cooldown buffs. The cooldown per tick is really, really good on the upgrade too, but especially in Joust, you don't always get to that upgrade stage. So just keep that in mind. Benevolence getting a complete rework. I did not see in the notes, I may have missed it, but I did not see that Benevolence is coming back in Joust yet. Maybe it will, since it's getting this rework completely. But either way, here's the new Benevolence. Here's what it looks like. You get 100 health, 10 MP5, 7 HP5. Those are both really good stats in Joust. Having increased MP5 and HP5 just allows you to sustain passively all the time. But the new passive is every second you're not near an ally, you gain 1 stack of Benevolence. That stacks 50 times, and each assist you gain 4 stacks. When you're near a damaged ally, you spend those stacks to restore your health and your teammates' health to 15% of your max health. And then each stack consumed, you get gold. So the problem with this item now in Joust is that you're almost never not near an ally. So you're probably going to be getting those stacks for assists, but I don't think you're going to be getting stacks in any other situation almost. As a support, which this item is kind of meant for, you're not going to be far enough away from your team to get those stacks. So in the end, it's really not going to do what you're buying it for. If you're thinking of like Conquest or something, that's fine because you're going to be roaming all around the map and passively gaining those stacks. But in Joust, you don't want to be doing that. So even though this item may come back to Joust, I don't think it's better than Sentinels at this moment as a starter item. And War Flag is also getting a rework. It's yet to see what that one looks like. We'll go over that later in this video, obviously. But I don't think Benevolence will be better than that either. I think the passive is basically going to be worthless in Joust. The stats itself aren't that bad, the base stats, but the passive is not going to work how you want it to. So in the beginning, I would probably stay away from this item in Joust unless you're doing some cheese animosity build where you do have somebody like a Bakasura who's in the jungle all the time. Even then, I think there are better items, so that's my opinion on this new Benevolence rework in Joust specifically. Bumba's Dagger, adding 15 magical power and 10 physical power. I think this item is already pretty good in Joust. You get some cooldown, you get additional damage on some of your attacks. And having more power, I think this can actually work pretty well on certain non-assassin gods. I know that's kind of what it's made for, but there are other gods that can use this fairly effectively. Achilles comes to mind, or just some other gods like that can really apply that effect pretty often. So nice little buff. May want to consider this instead of some of the other starter items that you have been building in the past. War Flag also getting a little bit of a rework, I would say. Decreasing the stacks required to turn on that bonus gold effect from 4 to 3, so you don't need as many of those stacks to get the bonus gold, which I think kind of makes it better than that Benevolence now in Joust, because you're going to be able to get those stacks easier and that gold easier. And they removed 10 physical power and 20 magical power. They added 10 physical protections and 10 magical protections. So where this item was kind of meant to be that dive, attack heavy reward for going in very often because you have more power and more power on either side if you're physical or magical. Now you get physical and magical protections instead. So I just don't know how that really synergizes with this item. And in my opinion, until I get to really dig into this and use it, I think Sentinels is pretty much far and away the best support starter in Joust if you're comparing Sentinels, War Flag, and Benevolence. I think in order it goes Sentinels, War Flag, and then I would put Benevolence with the new rework a couple tiers below that. I'll try this out. I'll see if it really feels as bad as I think it's going to feel, but I do think that this is going to hurt the viability of War Flag in Joust. Arondight, increasing the base damage from decreasing the base damage from 40 to 20, but increasing the physical power scaling from 30% to 40%. And when first striking a revealed target, they take an additional 20 plus 40% of your physical power. So the reason you buy this item is to ult and then more easily chase down whoever you're ulting, or maybe it doesn't have to be that specific person that you're ulting, but it's going to allow you to do that chase a little bit easier than if you didn't have this item. And now that first attack is just going to hit way, way harder. I think there are plenty of gods that can use this item in Joust pretty effectively. I kind of come back to Achilles again. Even if you don't kill somebody with your ult, you're going to be able to chase them down and hit them with your 1 or your 3. Tsukiyomi is a really good contender for this item because you're going to be already right next to somebody as soon as you ult and just chase them down even easier and be able to hit your abilities and have them hit harder after your ult. So this is a nice little change. The base damage does hurt it a little bit, so you probably want to get this later on when you have other items, but I think it's a nice little change for Arondight. Brawler's Beat Stick, increasing the physical power from 40 to 50. Obviously, you buy this for anti-heal, and now you're going to get a little bit more power on top of it. So this is a good item to have in your arsenal pretty much anyways. If you're physical in any way, you probably want to be building this item at some point in Joust because there's likely to be a healer on the other side. And now you have more power, so it's even better. Good item before, even better item now. Heartseeker, increasing the bonus damage from the item's passive from 2 to 5% to 3 to 6%. So this is going to come into play on a lot of those gods that have rotating abilities or abilities that they can kind of spam. You don't really see much King Arthur or anything in Joust, but if you think of someone like a Cucullin, it's going to work really well on him if you build it late because he just has the ability to just go through so many abilities very, very quickly. And now it's doing that 3% kind of every time that you hit an ability. That is really going to stack fairly quickly, so you're going to be able to shred some of those tanks that you weren't able to before. This might affect some of that double tank meta, but I always think Joust is going to be more of a double tank comp meta regardless. So keep this in mind for times that you're having a hard time getting those tanks down to where you need to kill them. Jotunn's Wrath, decreasing the cost from 2350 to 2200. So the stats are not changing, but it's going to cost less to buy this item. 2200 is not very much gold at all. I think between this change and a change that we'll talk about later on in Transcendence, Jotunn's is going to be a very, very, very popular item to rush in Joust. The cooldown reduction and the pen mixed with how cheap it is, you're probably going to be able to buy it on your first back almost if you get one kill or you get a team kill or you just farm up effectively, and that power spike is going to be pretty nice. So I think even though it didn't get any stat changes itself, this item is going to be almost a must build on pretty much anybody who's physical, as long as you don't need to rush anti-heal. The Crusher, increasing physical power from 30 to 40. So again, if you have some of those hunters or warriors that are really ability based, you're just going to have more power on top of it to hit those abilities more often. And I haven't mentioned assassins that much in this rundown, but all of these items do help assassins in the damage department, so you might see more of them in Joust, but I still think they have a hard time surviving with all the CC and kind of grouping that happens in Joust. So you can try these out on assassins, but I still think it's going to be more of a double tank meta for sure. And then Transcendence, which is the very last change, a little buff on Transcendence, increasing the physical power from 35 to 45. I kind of already thought that the ability-based hunters are better in Joust specifically, and the Transcendence change, the Jotunn's change, the Crusher change, I think it's just going to reinforce that even more. So the Cupids of the world, the Chirons of the world are just going to be doing more damage in Joust across the board. I still like warriors, but I think hunters are going to feel a lot better with a lot of these item changes, and they're going to be able to do a lot more damage than they were before. So that's it. That is all the item changes that are happening in the Cleanliness versus Godliness update. Update is going live on September 21st. So if you learned something, please subscribe. Please follow me on Twitch. I'm doing a couple of giveaways, which you saw at the beginning of the video here too. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys next time.